Welcome to the Bozeman Beat, the City of Bozeman's podcast where we have real conversations about issues our city cares about. I'm Mayor Joey Morrison, your host, and I'm chatting with people across the community to shed light on things the city is involved in and things we may not be but are still important to our residents. Today, we have the honor of talking with Reach Inc.'s Executive Director, Dee Metrick, to learn more about how adults with developmental disabilities are experiencing Bozeman and what Reach is seeing. We'll hear more about how the city and Reach have worked together on some of the everyday challenges that are both unique to this population and at times familiar to virtually everyone in the broader public. Dee, welcome to our show. Could you start out with just telling us a little bit about yourself? And one of the questions we're trying to ask more often is, what is your favorite thing about Bozeman, about this community?
Thank you for having me, and I'm happy to talk about myself, one of my favorite topics after Reach Incorporated. I moved to Bozeman in May of 1998, and I joined the Reach team in February of 99. So I had a little bit of experience in this field in college in another state, working in a residential space in a home for people with special needs. And when I started my job at Reach, it was going to be temporary. And 27
Hmm.
years later, I'm still here. I did start in direct care. I've had a number of jobs at Reach Incorporated. And in March of 2020, which was fantastic timing, I became executive director. So
Yeah,
I don't
thankfully,
recommend
there
that.
was nothing complicated or
No.
challenging that was about to tear many of us asunder over the next several
Yeah,
years.
totally chill. I love cats and podcasts. So I'm excited to be here today.
Nice.
And ultra running and mountain adventures. And my favorite thing about being in Bozeman is the in town and nearby mountain trails. I love the accessibility to the public lands and also the in town trails. I think it's great.
Yeah, I we've become we've been frequent users of our trail system for a long time, and it's been wild to see improvements over the last couple of years that we every now and then will run into a trail that we haven't been on before that's in the city limits, which is somewhat shocking. Not that GVLT needs more kudos in the world, but they're doing amazing stuff out there.
I'm grateful.
Just to really start with a grounding, because I'm sure so many folks probably have heard the name Reach or seen the logo or seen a sticker somewhere or heard about it, but might not know exactly what it does. Could you just give us a quick lay of the land? What does Reach do?
I would love to. Well, first of all, we've been around a long time. Reach opened April 4th, 1974. What happened was there were some parents and special educators who saw that there were no services for adults with special needs in our community. And so they started what was just going to be an activity center, and that grew to today. So we serve only adults. And everyone in our services has an intellectual or developmental disability. So things like autism, Down syndrome, Fragile X syndrome, or a traumatic brain injury that happened before age 18. Those are some examples. And we provide residential, vocational, and transportation services. So we have 7 residential facilities, 4 different levels of care for our clients. We have a work program where we try to get all of our clients who want to be employed in the community. And then also at our work center, we employ our clients. And then we have 22 vehicles that we use for transportation, and a very large percentage of those are wheelchair accessible. A number of the people we serve have mobility issues or use wheelchairs, and so we have to have vehicles that can accommodate that. And all of our buildings are also wheelchair accessible.
Sorry, and I might have missed how many buildings?
So, well, we have 8 buildings. There's 7 residential
Okay.
facilities. There's 4 levels of care, but one of the levels of care are for folks who are independent enough that they rent or own their own apartment or home, and we go into their home and help them. But we have 45 people that we serve in Reach facilities. So Reach owned low income housing,
Mhm.
basically.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight that because I think sometimes it sounds like, oh, it's a small operation, it's a beloved local nonprofit,
Mm.
but operating 7 facilities,
Residential, yeah.
7 residential facilities in a fleet of 22 vehicles
Yeah.
is not a small
Yeah.
operation. And I just, want to make sure that that's apparent to our listeners, like what an intense service and operation that Reach operates in this community.
Yeah. There's 92 people that we assist that live in Bozeman.
Wow.
Yeah.
So one of the things we always want to try to hit on is what the relationship is between the organization that we're talking with, in this case, Reach, and the city of Bozeman. Could you share a little bit about what's the overlap or what's the connection that Reach often has with the city?
Well, there's a lot of them. First and foremost, we have a lot of accountability to a lot of different organizations. And so every year we are subject to a fire inspection. And so the fire department comes in and makes sure that all of our buildings are safe for the people we serve and that we're meeting all the standards of care. We have sanitation inspections for licensing. And then we work collaboratively with a lot of other nonprofits that I know the city also works collaboratively with, like HRDC. So our more independent clients, many of them use Streamline and Galavan. We do depend on the police department when there's emergencies. So we do have 24-hour a day availability for emergencies, but from a Reach staff person, but sometimes we need assistance from police, fire department. And we have been known to use 911 on occasion. And again, the police department typically responds pretty promptly and then looks to us for what we need for our clients, and we work with them as well when there's an emergency situation.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, I appreciate that kind of background because, of course, like y'all are sailing your own ship. It's
Mhm.
not necessarily something that we're having to think about on a day to day of a policy change that we're needing to make, et cetera, to make sure that you guys are able to operate. And so I think an important part of this is one knowing that folks that work with or live with adults with developmental disabilities, like they know how misunderstood this
Mhm.
is. Like if you've ever worked with this population, you know how challenging it can be. What are some myths that you would want to, dispel or address about the population that you work with?
Any myth that says that they're different from the average person, they're all so sweet, right? I mean, there are some experiences that we get to have with our clients that are really inspiring, but also, like the rest of us, if they get too hungry or too tired, they're going to get grumpy. They're not always so sweet. And their perspective may be different
Mm,
because their life experience is different. But they're not any different in terms of, they're not all totally lovable. Some of them, again, have their grumpy moments. Also, the a lot of people underestimate our clients.
mhm.
And so sometimes we have challenges that are surprising to people. Like we'll have clients that'll figure out that, oh, that person that works at the gas station store thinks I'm cute and sweet. So I can just put stuff into my backpack, and we'll be like, don't let it'll be someone who has Down syndrome, and they're adorable and they're sweet, and so they start learning that they can steal and just bat their eyelashes and not get in trouble, and we have to say to the people at the store, "Please, they need consequences. They like the rest of us, they are capable of working and earning money to buy the things at the store. Let them
Yeah.
have the responsibilities that the rest of us do of earning money and buying things at the store. You have to, like everyone
Hmm.
else, let them do what they can do." And so there's a lot of underestimation, but I also think people don't realize how hard it can be to live with a mobility issue. And that's one of the places where Reach struggles a bit is accessibility. This town can be a little challenging. There are some things that have been done recently that we appreciate a lot. The map of accessible parking is huge. And the new trails that are accessible are great. We're really excited about a lot of that stuff for our clients' recreation and staff learning, where they can park to help
Yeah.
people get in and out. But also, whenever I see someone parking and it blocks, our client's ability to put our staff's ability to put a ramp out of a vehicle and then the client get back into the vehicle, like sometimes our clients get stuck in places because people aren't respectful with their parking. Um, they think I'm just running in for 20 minutes. Well, there's
Yeah.
someone who's going to be late somewhere because you parked in a rude manner, is how I'll say. Illegal,
Yeah.
even. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I appreciate your kind of lifting up those last pieces because I think the city we've heard for years now, hey,
Mhm.
there's a lot of these things you guys can be doing better
Mhm.
and trying to take really seriously. One, the return on investment that we
Mhm.
as a community get with these surgical injections of, this map was not a Herculean effort, but we know that for some it's a huge impact and wanting to continue that momentum. And so I guess, just really while we're on that, because I think it's of course, like some of the myths that you discussed, I really appreciate. But what are some of the for reach or for the population you serve? What are some of the challenges that they're experiencing or that you guys are experiencing?
Oh gosh, there are a lot of challenges. One right now, our biggest challenge is staff. Our wages are not high enough for people to live in this city, so a lot of the folks who work for us have multiple jobs,
Mhm.
and they're dedicated to the cause. But I mean, you still have to pay your rent in the end. So we at the peak in about 2022, we had a 34% staff vacancy rate, and everybody who worked at Reach was doing incredible amounts of overtime. Right now, we're down to 13% staff vacancy rate, which is pretty good, but it's still really hard on the clients and the staff. And then, as I said, the like our emergency planning or even our vacation planning is really complicated. Like one of our houses that has the most support, there's 6 residents, excuse me, and 4 of them use wheelchairs. There's anywhere from 2 to 4 staff at any given time. So if you like we had a flood in that house a few years ago, and there was nowhere for our clients to go. There wasn't a VRBO, there wasn't a hotel that could accommodate that many people with their staff. There was nowhere for them to go. So our clients who did not understand what was going on, they ended up having to sleep in our work center for a few weeks, and it was exhausting and upsetting,
Mhm.
and confusing and uncomfortable. And but there's nowhere for that many people who use wheelchairs to go. And so there's challenges like that. There's a huge wait list for services right now. Reach is the only provider in Bozeman that has residential support in a Reach owned home, for folks who have a high level of care. So that's a challenge. There's some challenges with case management is a huge part of
Mm,
receiving and
yeah.
maintaining services, and their wages are not great either. And so their turnover is also high. Um, we have trouble getting insurance. And that's one of our big struggles.
From what? What
Well,
what's the
for our
barrier?
houses and for our vehicles and for our, like staff, and stuff like that. And part of it is just it's a high risk population
Sure. That's
with
what I was
staff
wondering.
that are known to overwork and give too much of themselves. And it's high risk for the insurance company. We have trouble with preventing burnout. There's some challenges with Medicaid and Social Security eligibility right now. Um, and these are lifetime services. So once
Yeah.
someone's in, they're in. We have a gentleman, he's in his 80s. He's been with Reach since 1975, and he's lived in 3 of our 4 levels of support. So he was in one of our standard houses, which means it's 24-hour a day care, but relatively independent. He became independent enough to move into supported living, which is the folks who live in their own apartments, and we just go in and help them a bit. Then, as he aged, he moved into one of our apartment complexes, which has staffing, 8 to 12 hours a day. And then, as he continued to age and needed more physical assistance, now he's back in our standard housing with 24-hour support again. And so, we guarantee the care once you're in. Well, if someone loses their Medicaid eligibility, which is a chunk of our funding, we get reimbursed by Medicaid for the services and supports we provide. We still have to provide that, but we're not getting paid. And part of what's happening in the system right now is there's more requirements to prove eligibility
Right.
multiple times a year. And our clients' disabilities aren't going away, but some of our clients, their families are the ones that are responsible for that paperwork. And so it's very confusing.
Mhm.
It doesn't always look like official paperwork. And so we've had families throw out pieces of paper and then the clients lose their eligibility and then getting it back is incredibly complicated. So, and also there's fewer and fewer people that will serve folks who take Medicaid. So it's hard to get our clients into dentists.
Mhm.
It's hard to get our clients into neurologists, and they have a higher level of medical need than the average person. So yeah, it's not an easy service to provide, but again, it is rewarding for those of us that are there, wake up in the morning knowing I'm making a difference. That feels good.
Sure. The I just find that shocking that there's not a mechanism to that if someone is on Medicaid and then comes in and then loses Medicaid, that you guys are stuck providing the service, but effectively have an unfunded mandate to continue working with that person. That there's not a, I mean, I think, without getting too far down the rabbit hole of the Medicaid changes in this country, but just like, wow, it's just an additional, like you guys are already kind of bootstrapping to get
Yeah.
this operation to work. And then saying, here's this already insufficient injection of funding. Here's a way you're just going to lose it and have a very hard time of getting a client back onto getting those reimbursements.
Yeah. And we have 3 months. But the issue is we're billing. So right now we're providing services in July. We will bill the state in August. And then it can take another 3 weeks
Hmm.
to find out that we are not getting paid. And then we have to dig and find out why. Now that's our first question is, did they lose eligibility? But we're already a month in.
Right.
And so now we only have 2 months to get this figured out. And one of the challenges is the people who are working in the Social Security office and the Medicaid office also are overworked,
Hmm.
underpaid, abused constantly. And so they have their share of challenges with the amount of work that they're facing and the number of people in need. I take a phone call at least once a week from a distraught family member saying, I don't know what to do. My adult child or my adult sibling needs more support than the family can provide. What do we do? And assuming that the Medicaid paperwork is all filled out and the Social Security stuff is all filled out, um, it's a 9.5 year wait just to get a cost plan. And a cost plan is step one. Then you have to get a spot. Now, we provide lifetime services. So spots don't open up very often.
Hmm.
And you have to qualify for the spot that opens because it's different. For a certain level of independence, you have
Yeah.
to have a certain level of skill. So I get these calls, desperate parents, and I say, once everything's good to go, you got 9.5 years. The average across the country is 3 years. So Montana is
Wow.
way behind.
Way behind.
And our wait list is over 1,700 people when I wrote it down, it's like 2,500 or 2,700 or something folks. There's 2,477 people enrolled across the state of Montana in these services and there's 1,768 people waiting for services. So, I mean, it's not that big a difference, the number of folks who are receiving services
Hmm.
versus the number of people that are waiting. So I kind of identify with these employees of the Social Security and Medicaid office where you get these desperate calls and you
Yeah.
want to help and you can't. And that is one of the big challenges that we face is just we can't, every client we take on, we lose money. So we can't grow.
Right.
We're working on it, but it's gonna take some creative thinking and outside the box and changing a little bit of what Reach has done in the past and some time and some resources. And so there's some challenges.
Yeah. I appreciate getting to this topic because I think this is one, when I was working either at the help center and answering our suicide crisis line or at the warming center, and we were working with really vulnerable people. We were working with folks that, were a retired senior at one point and are now using a shelter. And if I feel like I've heard similar stories of what I can imagine people say about the population that you're working with, that's not just like the malice or the stigma of the people, but it's also this sense that this is absurd how hard this is to operate this. There must be something that just makes this work out. There must be something that just takes care of this. I remember having conversations like that with folks of, somebody would have a broken leg and would get dropped off the emergency room and then they had to walk back to the warming center, where folks were like, well, there's got to be somebody who would take care of this. And it's like, no, there is
Mhm.
not someone to take care of these things except for the diligent crisis workers, social workers that are underpaid and overworked and trying to operate facilities like yours. So I just wanted to kind of commiserate about
Mhm.
things are getting harder, not easier,
Mhm.
while the crises are getting more severe.
Yeah.
And I think that mismatch is really frustrating to a lot of the public, not just that are yelling at us, but are yelling at our state government, our federal government.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we also, I mean, again, the more independent our clients are, the more vulnerable they are to exploitation. And which is, people taking financial or sexual advantage of our clients. And the challenges that we have are evolving as fast as the technology, right? So we have clients with smartphones who think they have, a boyfriend who needs money, who's They've
Mhm.
never met, but this is real for them, it's really real, and they're getting taken advantage of, and now we have on top of that and I you know, I don't wanna open up the box to AI, but it's confusing for our clients what's real and what's not.
Right.
As the technology evolves, I mean, when quote unquote typical people can't figure out what's AI and what's not, how are we gonna expect folks with special needs, intellectual disabilities to understand what's real and what's not? And it's some of the challenges just they just keep coming. But we do, I mean, we have successes too. I don't want to get too negative.
Yeah. What are so for listeners that, yeah, maybe are feeling like, "Oh my god,
Oh, so
everything's getting
sad. Yes.
worse and worse, faster and faster," which they are.
In some
What
ways,
are
yeah.
some things that, yeah, what keeps you showing up to work? What are the things that, maybe are there few and far between that feel like these successes that make the worth doing?
Well, one of the really cool things about my job is I've gotten to know some of our founders, some of the founding parents, and some of the founding special education teachers, and talking to them about what they started with and how I get emotional when I talk about it, but like how much Reach has grown
Mhm.
and how much Reach has overcome. This is not the first time that Reach has faced hardship in its history.
Sure.
And so these stories of people overcoming and seeing the clients themselves. I mean, I have 27-year relationships with a lot of these folks, and I've watched them overcome hardships and, I you know, like, even during COVID, it was harder on the staff than it was on the clients. They did a really good job adapting to what was coming their way. Now, granted, again, it wasn't all rainbows and butterflies, but, um they got through, and, I just feel like I get to see a lot of success. We also I mean, we did since I one of my goals when I became executive director, we had a 14C certificate, which was a we were allowed to pay the clients less than minimum wage, and I've hated that sub-minimum wage certificate for 20 years of my 27-year experience at Reach, and so even when I was talking to the board of directors in my interview, I said, "I wanna get rid of this." Well, then COVID hit, and it took a few years,
Mm.
but we did. We got all of our clients are making at least minimum wage in all of the work that they do, and that was important to me to
Yeah.
say, like, they are equal to all other workers, and they deserve at least equal pay, and, getting that done just felt amazing. I'd been waiting 20 years for that to happen, and it finally did. So that's even just the way the staff pulled together to see our clients through COVID, no matter and there were political differences among the staff,
Sure.
and they
Yeah.
still came together and focused on the mission and worked real hard. We've our fundraising program has grown quite a bit in the last 20 years, and there's a lot of longevity at Reach. I'm not the most senior person with
Wow.
27 years. Our management team, there's a lot of experience. Our direct care staff, there's a lot of experience, and so just the fact that people manage to stay so committed to the folks we work with, it is really inspiring. And the clients themselves. I mean, again, it's not all happy, 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 but it is. There's a lot of fun to be had, um, and there's a lot to learn from the people we serve too. They just have a really different perspective, and it's helpful to see how they adapt to what comes their
Yeah.
way. So,
Yeah, that retention
mhm.
is kind of an unbelievable testament to the culture of the organization and, the leadership probably of yourself and almost assuredly and boards and executive directors before you to inspire folks to want to keep committed to almost certainly getting underpaid and having to do really, really hard work.
Yeah, the executive director before me was a man named Rob Talon, and he was there for 35 years. And an important part for him with the culture was paid time off. So we have a pretty good paid time off benefit, which is helpful as our staff are coming from other places more and more often as well.
Sure.
They want to go visit their family and they want to be able to backpack in the crazy mountains. And so the time off does give them that opportunity, but also it gives them time to rejuvenate from some of the hard, frustrating stuff, which is more about the bureaucracy than the clients, right?
Yeah.
But that's a reality of what we do.
Yeah. I appreciate to just lifting up the the transform the transformational moments that you might have with these clients. I shared this story on Saturday of one of my roommates working with a woman who living independently with a disability that was deteriorating rapidly, and then suddenly being able to get connected through ability um, with compensation from Medicaid and disability reimbursements and things like that, and how dramatically it changed this person's life and their trajectory from like deteriorating to hobbies and reading and all these things that this person hadn't done in many years. And I'm sure those are the types of experiences that you guys are having over there that keep people wanting to come back and work
Yeah,
with those folks.
100%. And one of my favorite things when we get new clients in and they have, parents and or siblings who've been caretakers their whole life. And then they come to reach and the parents get to have an adult to adult relationship and the siblings get to have an adult to adult relationship instead of caretaker.
Hmm.
It becomes again a much more typical parent to kid relationship where the kid gets to invite them into their life instead of being dependent. And it's so beautiful to watch the family dynamics
Hmm.
change too. That's one of my favorite things about this job.
Yeah, I suspect move-in days are pretty
They're tense.
special.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it does take some time. Change can be challenging for
yeah,
everybody, especially the parents.
yeah. I'm sure.
But it once everything gets settled, it's great. Yeah.
What as this is a population that so many folks, right? Maybe their only experience with this population is seeing them at the grocery store or sharing a bus ride with them. They're not in their life. They're not friends of friends. They're not family members. What piece of advice would you give to listeners that maybe don't interact with this population that often?
Find opportunities to interact with this population. Whether it's working for Reach, volunteering for Special Olympics, volunteering for Eagle Mount, getting to know a neighbor, helping a friend with their adult kid or sibling. It's worth your time to get to find opportunities to get to know this population.
Dee, thank you for joining us, and thank you to our listeners. This was a really rich conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to you know educate and talk with our listeners about this important topic.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Bozeman Beat. If you enjoy listening to this show, please help us out by sharing this episode with a friend or rating and reviewing our show on whichever podcast app you use. If you have feedback, questions, or a suggestion for a future topic you'd like to hear us discuss, please email us at podcast@bozemanmt.gov. That's podcast@bozemanmt, as in Montana.gov. Hope to see you in the next episode.